At 4 in the morning, while Jackie Chan slept soundly in his hotel room across the city, Tommy Chen was already 3 hours into what he called his ritual of calculated destruction. The prop workshop was silent except for the soft rasp of sandpaper against balsa wood and the occasional crack of a test break. Tommy's weathered hands moved with the precision of a surgeon, because in many ways, that's exactly what he was. He was performing surgery on danger itself, removing its lethal edge while preserving its convincing appearance. If you enjoy calm behind-the-scenes stories like this, subscribe. Tomorrow we follow another invisible craft that keeps the legend alive. Tomorrow's stunt sequence would require Jackie to crash through a wooden table, tumble down a flight of stairs, and smash through a storefront window. To the audience, it would look like bones should break, blood should flow, and careers should end. But Tommy Chen had spent 15 years perfecting the art of making destruction safe. And tonight, like every night before a major stunt sequence, he was ensuring that Jackie Chan would live to perform another day. What the world didn't understand was that creating fake danger was infinitely more difficult than creating real danger. Real danger was simple. Sharp edges cut, hard surfaces bruise, and gravity kills. But fake danger required engineering, artistry, and an almost supernatural understanding of how objects break, bend, and betray the laws of physics. Tommy had been awake since 1 a.m., not because the schedule demanded it, but because his conscience did. He'd learned early in his career that the difference between a legendary stunt and a tragic accident was often measured in millimeters of padding thickness or the grain direction of breakaway wood. Tonight, he was preparing 17 different props that Jackie would interact with during tomorrow's sequence, and each one had to break in exactly the right way, at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right sound to maintain the illusion of authentic impact, while ensuring that the most valuable stunt performer in Hong Kong cinema remained intact. The workshop smelled of wood dust, spirit gum, and the peculiar chemical tang of breakaway glass made from sugar. Tommy moved between workstations like a conductor, orchestrating a symphony of controlled destruction. Here, he tested the structural integrity of balsa wood painted to look like oak, ensuring it would splinter dramatically but harmlessly when Jackie's shoulder struck it. There, he adjusted the scoring on sheets of candy glass, calculating the precise pattern that would create spectacular shattering while leaving edges too dull to cut skin. Most people assumed that prop work was about creating things that looked real. Tommy knew better. Prop work was about creating things that felt real to the performer while behaving in ways that defied reality's more dangerous impulses. The table Jackie would crash through tomorrow had been rebuilt 6 times until Tommy achieved the perfect balance between structural integrity and controlled collapse. It needed to support Jackie's weight during the approach, resist just enough to sell the impact, then disintegrate in a way that would scatter debris safely away from his body. Tommy picked up one of the table legs, a hollow construct of balsa wood and cork wrapped in oak grain contact paper. To the cameras, it would photograph as solid hardwood. In reality, it weighed less than a pencil and would compress like a sponge upon impact. He'd spent 4 hours yesterday adjusting the internal honeycomb structure that would control exactly how it crumpled, ensuring that the energy of Jackie's impact would be absorbed and dissipated rather than transferred back into his body. Tommy picked up one of the table legs, a hollow construct of balsa wood and cork wrapped in oak grain contact paper. To the cameras, it would photograph as solid hardwood. In reality, it weighed less than a pencil and would compress like a sponge upon impact. He'd spent 4 hours yesterday adjusting the internal honeycomb structure that would control exactly how it crumpled, ensuring that the energy of Jackie's impact would be absorbed and dissipated rather than transferred back into his body. The producers had initially balked at the expense and complexity of Tommy's methods. They'd worked with prop masters who simply used softer materials painted to look harder, or who relied on camera angles to hide the substitution of breakaway items for real ones. But Tommy's philosophy was different. He believed that if a stunt performer could sense that a prop was fake, their performance would be compromised. Jackie needed to approach each obstacle with genuine commitment, which meant each prop had to feel authentic until the moment of controlled failure. This philosophy had led Tommy to develop what he privately called graduated authenticity. His breakaway props were engineered with multiple failure points, each designed to activate in sequence. The initial contact would feel completely real, giving the performer authentic feedback for the crucial first milliseconds of impact. Then, as forces increased beyond safe levels, the hidden engineering would take over, causing the prop to fail in spectacular but harmless ways. The technique required unprecedented precision in materials engineering. Tommy maintained relationships with suppliers across 3 countries, sourcing specialized woods that grew in specific climates, adhesives that failed at predetermined stress levels, and fabrics that would tear in photogenic patterns while retaining enough integrity to protect skin. His workshop contained drawers full of materials that existed nowhere else in the film industry, substances he'd often created himself through months of experimentation. As dawn approached, Tommy found himself working on the most critical element of tomorrow's sequence, the storefront window that would serve as the stunt's dramatic conclusion. Jackie would be thrown backward through this barrier, and the moment needed to capture both the violence of real impact and the shower of glittering destruction that audiences expected from movie glass. But real glass, even tempered safety glass, remained fundamentally unpredictable. Its failure patterns could change based on temperature, humidity, even the musical frequency of nearby sound equipment. Tommy's solution was sugar glass, a confection that looked identical to plate glass, but shattered into harmless crystals that dissolved on contact with moisture. The chemistry was straightforward, but the artistry lay in achieving the right thickness, clarity, and failure characteristics. Too thick, and it wouldn't shatter convincingly. Too thin, and it would collapse before Jackie reached it. The mixture had to be precisely calibrated to Hong Kong's humidity levels, the temperature of the set lights, and even the speed of Jackie's approach. More challenging was creating the window's frame and mounting system. The glass needed to be held firmly enough to resist wind and vibration during filming, but configured to release completely when struck by a human body moving at speed. Tommy had developed a mounting system using magnetic releases calibrated to trigger at specific impact forces. The frame itself was constructed from aluminum tubing filled with cork, painted to match the building's actual window frames, but engineered to bend and absorb impact energy. Every element of the sequence had been rehearsed dozens of times using progressively more realistic stand-ins. Tommy had worked with Jackie's stunt double to perfect the timing and approach angle, then created a series of practice windows using increasingly realistic materials. By the time Jackie performed the actual stunt, both he and the props would be perfectly synchronized, each knowing exactly how the other would behave at the moment of truth. The irony wasn't lost on Tommy that his greatest professional successes were invisible to everyone except the performer who didn't get hurt. A perfectly executed breakaway prop left no evidence of its engineering. The audience saw authentic destruction. The performer felt authentic resistance until the moment of safe failure, and the cameras captured footage that looked indistinguishable from genuine violence. Tommy's artistry erased itself in the moment of its greatest triumph. By 6 a.m., Tommy had completed his testing protocols and begun the careful process of transporting the prepared props to the filming location. Each item was wrapped in custom padding that would be removed just before the cameras rolled. The breakaway table was disassembled and packed in a case that looked like it contained a valuable instrument. The sugar glass windows were cushioned between layers of foam that matched their fragility to their precious cargo. Tommy's van was a mobile workshop, 3 stories high, 2 floors, 1 basement. Its 2 floors were filled with equipped with backup materials for on-set adjustments and emergency replacements. Experience had taught him that even perfectly prepared props could be damaged during transport or compromised by unexpected changes in filming conditions. He carried spare breakaway wood, backup glass panels, and the portable tools needed to reconstruct items under pressure. The drive to the set was always a meditation for Tommy. He reviewed each stunt sequence in his mind, visualizing potential failure points and mentally rehearsing the adjustments he might need to make. The relationship between prop master and stunt performer was built on absolute trust, and that trust required Tommy to anticipate not just what was planned, but what might go wrong. Jackie arrived on set at 8 a.m., 2 hours before filming was scheduled to begin. Tommy watched as the star examined the setup, noting how Jackie tested each prop with subtle touches that revealed his own understanding of the engineering involved. There was a moment of communication between them that required no words. Jackie would press gently against the breakaway table, feeling how its surface gave slightly under pressure. He would examine the mounting of the sugar glass window, checking the angles and clearances. This wasn't distrust. It was professional collaboration between two specialists who understood that their shared success depended on perfect synchronization. The rehearsals began with Jackie moving through the sequence at quarter speed, allowing both performer and props to communicate with each other. Tommy watched from behind the cameras, noting how each element responded to Jackie's approach. The table's initial resistance was perfect, providing authentic feedback without creating actual obstruction. The window mounting held steady against Jackie's gentle test impacts, but showed the micro-movements that indicated it would release cleanly under full force. When filming finally began, Tommy positioned himself where he could see every angle of the action while remaining clear of the camera lines. His job during the actual performance was to watch for any sign that his engineering might be failing in unexpected ways. A prop that collapsed too early could leave Jackie striking a hard surface with full force. A prop that failed to collapse could turn a planned impact into a real collision with potentially catastrophic results. The sequence unfolded exactly as rehearsed, but watching it happen at full speed and intensity still left Tommy breathless. Jackie hit the breakaway table with complete commitment, trusting absolutely in Tommy's engineering. The table's surface compressed exactly as designed, absorbing the initial impact before triggering the cascade failure that sent splinters flying in spectacular but harmless directions. Jackie's roll through the collapse was perfect. His body following the trajectory that Tommy had calculated would keep him clear of any debris. The tumble down the stairs showcased another aspect of Tommy's artistry. The steps themselves had been modified with hidden padding and slightly rounded edges, changes so subtle that the cameras couldn't detect them, but significant enough to prevent injury during Jackie's controlled fall. Each step was designed to redirect Jackie's momentum rather than stop it, creating a series of impacts that looked violent, but were actually guiding him safely toward the sequence's conclusion. The crash through the sugar glass window was the moment that always stopped Tommy's heart, regardless of how perfectly he'd engineered the prop. Glass, even fake glass, carried psychological weight that made both performer and audience anticipate injury. Jackie approached the window at full speed, his body language showing no hesitation or protective instinct that might compromise the shot's authenticity. The impact triggered Tommy's magnetic release system perfectly, allowing the frame to bend away while the glass shattered into a crystalline cascade that caught the lights like fallen stars. As the cameras stopped rolling and the crew erupted in applause, Tommy was already moving to examine the debris pattern from his destroyed props. This post-stunt analysis was crucial for understanding how his engineering had performed under real conditions and for refining future designs. He collected samples of the shattered sugar glass, noting how cleanly it had broken and whether any pieces had formed sharp edges. He examined the compressed remains of the breakaway table, checking whether the failure pattern had followed his intended design or revealed unexpected stress points. Jackie approached while Tommy was conducting his forensic examination of the props. The star's costume showed the dramatic evidence of his passage through multiple obstacles, but his skin was unmarked and his movements showed no sign of impact trauma. This was the true measure of Tommy's success: spectacular visual destruction with zero actual damage to the performer. The conversation between them was brief, but meaningful. Jackie expressed his appreciation for the prop's behavior during the sequence, noting particularly how the table's initial resistance had felt completely authentic before transitioning to controlled collapse. This feedback was invaluable to Tommy, who understood that the psychological component of stunt performance was as important as the physical engineering. If a prop felt fake during the approach, it would compromise the performer's commitment and ultimately the authenticity of the finished scene. Tommy spent the remainder of the day cleaning up the debris from his destroyed props and preparing backup items for potential retakes. The sugar glass dissolved cleanly with warm water, leaving no residue that might create slipping hazards for subsequent scenes. The breakaway wood was collected and sorted, with reusable pieces saved for future modifications and true waste disposed of according to environmental protocols that Tommy had developed over years of consideration for the impact of his necessarily destructive profession. That evening, as Tommy returned to his workshop to prepare props for the following day's sequences, he reflected on the paradox that defined his career. His greatest professional achievements were designed to leave no trace of their existence. A perfectly executed stunt prop succeeded precisely to the degree that audiences remained unaware of its artificial nature. The more convincing his destruction appeared, the more completely his artistry disappeared from the final product. This invisibility was both the challenge and the satisfaction of Tommy's profession. Unlike other crafts in filmmaking, where skill could be appreciated directly, prop engineering for stunts succeeded only when it remained completely transparent. The audience needed to believe they were witnessing real danger and authentic destruction, while the performer needed to experience complete safety, disguised as genuine risk. Tommy understood that his relationship with Jackie Chan was built on this fundamental deception. Jackie needed to trust completely in Tommy's engineering, while forgetting entirely that the engineering existed. The props had to provide authentic sensory feedback until the moment of controlled failure, creating an experience that felt real enough to generate committed performance, but safe enough to repeat take after take without cumulative damage. The workshop settled into its nighttime quiet, but Tommy's work continued. Tomorrow would bring new sequences requiring different types of controlled destruction, and each would demand the same meticulous preparation that had consumed the early morning hours. He pulled out the plans for the next day's props: a breakaway staircase railing, sugar glass bottles designed to shatter dramatically when thrown, and a series of furniture pieces engineered to collapse in sequence as Jackie fought his way through a restaurant scene. Each item would require hours of preparation, testing, and adjustment. Each would need to balance the competing demands of visual authenticity and performer safety, and each would succeed only to the degree that its artificial nature remained invisible to everyone except the man who trusted his life to Tommy's engineering. As Tommy began the familiar ritual of measuring, cutting, and testing that would carry him through another night of preparation, he took satisfaction in knowing that his invisible artistry allowed visible heroism. Somewhere across the city, Jackie Chan was sleeping peacefully, trusting that tomorrow's dangerous-looking stunts would be as safe as Tommy's engineering could make them. And when audiences around the world eventually watched those stunts, they would believe they were witnessing genuine peril overcome by extraordinary courage, never knowing that the real courage belonged to a prop master who spent sleepless nights ensuring that spectacular destruction remained safely spectacular and never truly destructive. Tommy's contribution to Jackie Chan's legend would never appear in credits beyond a simple acknowledgement as property master. But his engineering made possible the very stunts that defined Jackie's career. Every death-defying sequence, every moment of apparently reckless bravery, every spectacular crash that left audiences gasping in amazement was built on a foundation of Tommy's invisible protection. The prop master's art was the art of making safety look like danger, of engineering gentleness to appear as violence, of creating props so perfectly designed to fail safely that their failure looked like authentic destruction. It was a craft that demanded perfect execution while demanding perfect invisibility, a profession that succeeded only when it completely erased evidence of its own existence. And so, as Hong Kong slept and morning approached, Tommy Chen continued his ritual of careful destruction, preparing tomorrow's safety with the same devotion that others might reserve for prayer, knowing that his anonymous artistry would allow Jackie Chan to risk everything and lose nothing, to face death and meet only theater, to trust completely in dangers that existed only in the careful calculations of a prop master's love.